Deep below the warm tropical waters of the Pacific Ocean, there is a dark and almost frozen world. A place so dangerous to explore that we know precious little about it.
What if the deepest part of our planet, the one place no sunlight has ever reached, isn't silent, but hiding something? At 11,034 meters beneath the surface, where pressure can crush steel like paper, scientists expected nothing but darkness and stillness.
Hidden deep beneath the waves of the Western Pacific lies the Marianas Trench, the deepest point of all the oceans.
Instead, their recorders captured movement, impact, and something far more unsettling: sound. Creatures that defy chemistry, heat where there should be ice, tracks from something so massive it shouldn't be able to exist. And the worst part? Scientists won't talk about it. Tonight, we follow the evidence they tried to bury and reveal what the ocean might be trying to warn us about. Where silence begins. Although it is sometimes called the Abyssal Zone, the deepest part of the ocean is actually known as the Hadal Zone, after the Greek deity Hades. From an initial depth of approximately 20,000 feet, this zone descends to the Mariana Trench's Challenger Deep, where the deepest point ever measured is 36,200 feet, or 11,034 meters. You have to feel the strain to comprehend how harsh this setting is. Up here, we only have to deal with one atmosphere of pressure. Underwater, at this record depth, the pressure exceeds 1,000. Imagine a tiny car with the pressure of 50 super jumbo jets squeezed into every crevice. On the other hand, life exists. However, there is a limitation to this. No one anticipated finding this kind of life. Relics of the inexplicable were brought back by the first excursions, such as the biosphere Triestive in 1960. Don Walsh and Jacques Picard, the two guys on board, beheld an aquatic monster that resembled little flat fish. Simply said, this observation was a scientific earthquake, since it proved the existence of multicellular life under those unfathomably high pressures. What most people don't know is that the most disturbing objects found on that trip, and all the ones that followed, were not living things, but things that moved and voices that echoed. A significant achievement occurred in 1995 with the launch of the Japanese unmanned probe Kaiko. Microorganisms were able to be recovered, which are extremely small single-celled organisms. And here's the kicker. Only recently, scientists uncovered a xenomorph that was 4 inches long and resembled this single-shelled critter in scale. Imagine that, a single cell, barely bigger than a human hand, surviving in one of the most inhospitable surroundings ever encountered. The deep water giantism, which is characterized by its enormous size, is quite astonishing and provides compelling evidence that life adapted in very unusual ways when faced with such extreme conditions. However, non-biological occurrences are the ones that constitute the most horrifying experiences. Various hydrophones stationed at the ocean's deepest troughs have detected bloops and other ultra-low frequency noises. Although a lot of them are thought to be ice quakes or big whale choruses, there are a few unidentified and really unsettling deep-origin acoustic phenomena. The sounds that were recorded on the edge of the Hadal Zone, close to the Puerto Rican Trench, were characterized by one researcher as a scrape and a shudder. These sounds indicated the passage of something enormous and inflexible across the ocean floor, much bigger than any marine species that had been discovered up to that point. The most absurd aspect is that crews are briefed on what they are allowed to discuss every time an EV dives. Records pertaining to geology and microorganisms are the main points of the official reports. Unshared among them are the mysterious energy spikes that destroy sensitive sensor gear, the unexplainable temperature decreases that happen too fast for natural currents, and the proof of massive physical disturbances on the consistently calm, murky bottom. These anomalies, which can appear as enormous, unexplained tracts, are the result of an organism that has evolved to withstand pressures of more than 16,000 pounds per square inches. A combination of the extremely low temperature and the tremendous pressure makes any sign of life an incredible occurrence. A scientist's genuine discoveries can only be revealed once they discover proof of an unknown gigantic presence. What really goes into making those tracks is what conceals the truth from the public. Instead, than being afraid of aliens, the reason people are keeping quiet is because they are afraid to confess that their theories about the deepest part of the Earth's interior are utterly flawed. The next enigma of the deep sea can be solved by recognizing this enormous pressure. What if the silence isn't caused by the lack of life, but by its awareness of us? Why do the deepest explorers report unsettling stillness before their systems malfunction? Creatures that shouldn't exist, but do. The most remarkable scientific finding to come out of the Hadal Zone, which is 11,034 meters deep, isn't some long-lost technological artifact. Under such extreme stress, the impossible biology flourishes. The mathematical improbability of life as we know it is heightened by the forces that compress an organism's protein and cell membrane atoms. However, things aren't so cut and dry. First, let's discuss the figures. Where the Abyssal Zone terminates at approximately 20,000 feet is where the Hadal Zone begins, the deepest region of the ocean zones. At 26,700 feet, the Mariana Trench is home to the deepest dwelling fish known as the snailfish. At lower pressures, the chemical structures and even the swim bladders of fish are overwhelmed. Similar to how an egg begins to denature when cooked, their proteins would begin to disintegrate. Then, how do they stay alive? This is just mind-blowing. Trimethylamine in oxide is a substance that is produced by creatures living in the deep sea. This chemical acts as a pissolite, which is essentially a substance that stabilizes pressure. It builds up inside their cells, resisting the pulling power of water so that proteins can retain their form. The maximum depth to which an animal can descend is dictated by its ability to retain trimethylamine N oxide without causing an imbalance in salt levels. The snailfish is swimming just inside the depth limit that scientists have determined for bony fish. Because of this finding, researchers are re-evaluating what constitutes the limits of life. But hold on a second. What about the mysterious forms and extensive footprints seen at depths much below the snailfish? If it is the physical limit of bony fish. Here we see invertebrates living at extremely low depths, growing to huge proportions compared to their counterparts in shallower waters. The most famous example is the Alicella gigantea, a type of giant amphipod, a small crustacean that resembles a shrimp. Their length is less than an inch while they're in shallow water. They can reach lengths of up to 13 inches in the Kermadec Trench, which descends to more than 33,000 feet. And get this, there is speculation born from incredibly grainy and brief video footage that the largest of these hadopelagic giants might be exponentially larger, still creatures of massive scale that would dwarf the largest known crustaceans on the surface. Why does their size increase to such a shocking degree? Insufficient food intake is one possible explanation. Since food is extremely scarce, most of it descends as marine snow, a slow trickle of dead organic material, feces, and dust. Animals must bulk up in order to reduce metabolic rate and increase energy storage capacity. Their life cycles are further slowed, and they are able to develop for hundreds of years due to the chilly temperature, which is just a few degrees above freezing. The scarcity of predators is also key. At depth, the snailfish is unopposed by any known natural adversaries. This lack of pressure from predators, not water, lets them grow at their own pace. But the unsettling recording suggests something else is at work. One incident, officially dismissed as equipment malfunction, involved a deep-sea submersible losing power briefly near the Puerto Rican Trench at about 27,000 feet. When the system rebooted, the short-range sonar showed a fast-moving, echo-dense object that was over 25 feet long passed directly underneath the vehicle. The speed and size indicated an animal far beyond the known limits of deep-sea life. The core issue is that known hadal invertebrates like the giant amphipod or sea cucumber. Another fascinating find from the Puerto Rican Trench are slow-moving scavengers. An object of that size moving that fast contradicts every piece of established deep-sea biology. The official report cited unstable sonar returns due to thermal layering, but the internal logs hint at a profound unacknowledged reality. The sheer difficulty of capturing and studying these organisms makes the secrecy understandable, if frustrating. To bring an animal up from 11,034 meters, you have to slowly decompress it over days or weeks. Otherwise, the massive pressure difference would cause the creature to expand and tear apart, or its TMAO levels would suddenly become lethal. Basically, the organisms are built for a high-pressure existence, and bringing them to the surface is an incredibly complicated, delicate process. This inability to easily capture and study the deepest fauna means that the only evidence of these massive, fast-moving anomalies comes from raw, non-repetible sensor data, which is far easier for scientists to officially ignore or dismiss, creating the wall of silence we're trying to understand. Another crucial detail is bioluminescence. Below 330 feet, you enter the twilight zone where light fades. And below 3,300 feet in the midnight zone, it's pitch black. Organisms here create their own light through chemical reactions using a substance called luciferin. This is used for everything, attracting a mate, luring prey, like the angler fish's glowing lure, or startling a predator. But the records from the Challenger Deep hint at a form of light that is not bioluminescence as we know it. In a few ultra-deep images taken by a lander at about 35,000 feet, there are momentary flashes of light that are too broad spectrum and too intense to be generated by a tiny fish or squid. It suggests an enormous sudden release of energy. One theory ties this to a phenomenon called sonoluminescence, where rapid depressurization causes bubbles to emit light. But in the stable, cold environment of the deep, this shouldn't happen naturally. What could cause a sudden, massive depressurization event in the quiet, crushing abyss? The unspoken truth is that something big and powerful is moving around down there, and the evidence is recorded as a flash of impossible light. The more we learn about the Hadal Zone's inhabitants, the slow, stable life designed to endure, the more alarming the records of fast, energetic, and huge unknowns become. This contradiction is the core of the terrifying secret. The incredible pressure is not just a barrier for life. It's a profound challenge for geology, which hides more unsettling truths. How are fragile living organisms surviving where even steel deforms? Could biology have evolved past the known limits of chemistry? When the ocean floor burns. At an altitude of 11,034 meters, research expeditions have found a horrifying contradiction, contrary to popular belief. Alongside the icy water, there is intense geothermal heat. From here on out, the focus is on explosive geology rather than implausible biology. A terrifying chain of events that reveals the tremendously unstable power of the Earth's crust at the ocean's depths. The Mid-Atlantic Ridge, the site of tectonic plate separation, is well known. However, subduction, in which one plate moves beneath another, forms deep trenches like the Kermadec and Mariana Trench. As a result of the extreme grinding action and the tremendous depth, hydrothermal vents form. which are among the most bizarre-looking geological phenomena on Earth. Among them, black smokers are the most well-known. They inhabit the depths of the ocean, typically between 5,000 and 12,000 feet, despite their interconnectedness with the factors that mold the Hadal zone. Hot springs like these aren't mild. The water emitted by these underwater geysers is superheated and heavily mineralized, reaching temperatures of more than 850 degrees Fahrenheit. Even that is an understatement. Give that some thought. Only the surrounding pressure of hundreds of atmospheres prevented the water from boiling. The minerals immediately precipitate or solidify as the extremely hot water meets the cool ocean, creating enormous chimneys that resemble black smoke columns. This is incredibly remarkable since, according to certain theories, this environment, not sunlight, was the one that nurtured life on Earth a billion years ago.
People were probably astounded by what they were seeing because clearly the ocean floor had enormous changes in relief, was very mountainous in some places, had great deeps in other places.
Allow me to explain. On the bottom of the Mariana Trench, close to the Challenger Deep, researchers have discovered something even more bizarre and shocking: mingling sulfur lakes and underwater volcanoes. In particular, at a depth of around 1,300 feet, the undersea volcano known as the Daikoku Seamount has a pool of pure molten sulfur. Over 370 degrees Fahrenheit, this seething black stuff is boiling. The most bizarre aspect is that the sulfur is continually reacting with the water around it, making a superheated, acidic soup that poses a serious threat to any exploration equipment in the area. If a submersible gets too close, it could melt its hull or destroy its delicate components. The unexplained and terrifying event logs associated with these structures reveal the true source of scientists' dread: the unexpected seismic activity. Consider the geologically active Puerto Rican Trench. An example of a catastrophic event that has already occurred as a result of the activity of this deep trench is the 1918 earthquake that hit Puerto Rico. The subsequent huge tsunami caused considerable damage and took over 100 lives. An unseen and deadly power, the energy of a 7-point earthquake originates from a geological process occurring miles below the surface. Hundreds of tiny, undetected tremors, detected by the seismic monitors positioned at the base of the trenches on a regular basis, show that enormous tectonic pressure is building up at the boundary of the deepest depths, but are too small to be felt on a global scale. And here's something else. NASA has noticed something strange close to the Puerto Rican Trench: a very thick layer of rock under the trench. The extremely dense nature of this formation causes the water surface above it to gently sink due to its negative gravitational effect. You may say this is a gravitational chasm. Although this mostly affects the precision of navigational aids, it does suggest the presence of an enormous, unknown mineral deposit or an extremely compressed portion of the Earth's mantle adjacent to the Atlantic's deepest point. The combination of this density with the geothermal activity points to a tremendous amount of latent energy trapped below the Earth's crust, limited only by the great pressure of the ocean above. Anomalies implying a rapid catastrophic release of heat include the most unsettling data acquired by the deep-sea landers. The data from the Challenger Deep Submersible mission revealed a brief but intense localized temperature rise of 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Extreme pressure effects are allegedly to blame for censored drift, according to the official explanation. A micro-eruption or abrupt rupture in a subcrustal hot vent would be strongly indicated by an abrupt outburst of water reaching approximately 95 degrees Fahrenheit at an altitude of 36,000 feet. The possibility of a much greater event follows naturally from the occurrence of these smaller ones. An underwater calamity with the potential to dramatically reshape the ocean floor and generate seismic shock waves on a scale unmatched by any previously recorded earthquake. Even though scientists have spoken out about these characteristics, they have remained mute when asked about the frequency and severity of the anomalies. The most terrifying occurrences are the verified instances of abrupt geothermal explosions and the ongoing documentation of latent seismic pressure. They make it sound like the calm, dark ocean floor is really just a protective covering for a hot, angry forge. The subsurface of the ocean is incredibly unstable, and the only thing that is holding back a massive explosion of fire is the tremendous pressure of the water. Because of the bottom's unstable geology, the next thing you know, it may be a hole rather than a creature, and whatever comes out of it could be much worse. Tracks no machine and no known creature could make. Exciting life forms in explosive geology aren't the only terrifying thing that happened at 11,034 meters below. There's also solid proof that it can't have been created by humans. This is not an abstract concept. Material disappearances, metal rips and scores, and the Hadal zone's soft, unspoiled dirt bears the impossibility of tracks. A strong, mysterious, non-biological interaction is plainly visible in the ocean's deepest regions. While the large fish get all the attention, the deep-sea landers remain a mystery to most. Designed to endure pressures of over 16,000 pounds per square inch. These unmanned vehicles, also called drop camps, are constructed from high-density ceramic spheres and titanium alloy. They go below, where they remain for a few hours or days to gather data before releasing ballast and making their way back to the surface. However, let me explain. There have been several cases of landers returning from the depths of the Challenger Deep with inexplicable physical harm. A huge deep gouge running across the top of one lander's titanium protection cage was discovered during an expedition in the early 2000s. Deep scoring on the metal nearly reached the interior circuits. Impact with a sharp rock during descent or ascent was the stated explanation. Although the trenches in the deep ocean are not stony, their distinctive feature is the presence of extremely fine, delicate diatomaceous muck, or ooze. The steep trench walls must be carefully avoided throughout the descent and ascent. The damage was also spotty and appeared to have been caused by a single forceful scrape, as if something large and hard with a curved surface had pushed against it on purpose. The insanity lies in the fact that whatever it was managed to score titanium, a metal that was already over its crushing point, thereby increasing its rigidity. The frequent observations of mysterious tracks on the bottom, seen on both limited visual film and high-resolution sonar, are connected to this damage. These do not represent the delicate reflections of the snailfish's minute motions.
Well, if you're feeling a bit narky this Monday morning, this is going to put a smile on your face. Almost 8,000 metres below the surface of the Pacific Ocean, somewhere off the coast of Peru, a new type of smiling fish has been discovered. It's officially called a snailfish.
The dense layer of soft mud is sliced through by these linear furrows, which can be more than 3 feet broad and stretch for hundreds of feet. Most people don't know that no known deep-sea creature could have made such perfectly symmetrical tracks at such a depth. Think about the biggest thing that lives at these depths. The 13-inch enormous amphipod, or the 4-inch xenophore. There is no known life form in the Hadal zone that is big enough, heavy enough, or structurally sound enough to carve furrows of this industrial scale. The tracks left behind by dragging machinery are distinct from these. Those are never seen without the obvious indications of a chain or anchor. The quick beginning and ending of these deep tracks give the impression of something settling and pulling its weight up from the bottom, or of a massive, hardened body dragging itself along the bottom. The most compelling proof that this is a really terrifying mystery is that the experts that recorded this data from deep inside the ocean have consistently avoided discussing the exact nature of the tracks, instead calling them geological striations. It's not merely the bodily harm. Case in point, the items that went missing. As part of the scientific payload, a number of biodegradable bait cages did not make it back to the surface during an unmanned flight to the Japan Trench. In order for the primary vehicle to climb, the cages were constructed of a basic metal framework with a detachable link. Once the cage's tracking pinger reached a depth of around 27,000 feet, it remained silent for 30 minutes. The next dive that looked for the misplaced gear turned up nothing more than a little circular indentation in the dirt. Metal, wire, and scattered bait were non-existent. It's as if the whole building, metal and all, had vanished into thin air or melted away. An unrecoverable object note is contained in the dive logs around this incident, which show a high retention surge. Within the deep sea community, whispers of the abyssal plane are commonly whispered about as the most unsettling incident. The sonar array picked up a sequence of very regular rhythmic clicks and scrapes during a mapping operation near the Tonga Trench, another deep hadal zone. The uniformity and robotic quality of these noises made them unnatural. But hold on a second. Neither the lander nor the usual source of seismic activity could account for them. Massive, heavy machinery was heard functioning on the ocean floor. Frequency and intensity studies disproved the possibility of a submerged vessel. The low-pitched noises seemed to be the result of repetitive, rhythmic movements. At the very end of the incident, there is a brief metallic crack, and then complete silence. This event's complete history is rated as a Level 3 security incident. Scary things could happen as a result. Something can score titanium hulls using its physical strength. There are traces in the deep mud that don't belong to any animals, and something enormous is moving through them. In the pitch blackness of the furthest ditches, something is working with an almost mechanical regularity. The truth is that scientists are keeping quiet, since all the physical signs point to either an enormously powerful being or an unknown underground power, with plans very different from our own. Something is changing the physical properties of our gear in the deep water, which is making us wonder what this mysterious hidden world is all about. If nothing alive should be able to move down there, then what dragged itself across the ocean floor? And how did it score titanium without being crushed? A living world beneath the map we know. Venturing into the depths of the ocean, particularly to the jaw-dropping 11,034-meter threshold, is more than just plunging into water.
It's a big surprise. Nobody thought the ocean was this deep. So all of a sudden we've got scientists saying, why is that?
A tale of profound paradoxes is descended into, where volcanic fire blossoms in utterly frigid darkness, and life somehow flourishes under pressure that ought to immediately crush bone. The evidence-based approach has been utilized throughout this series. We have examined the enormous amphipods of the deep sea, which are species that do not conform to the rules of biology. Our research has focused on the chemosynthetic energy sources that power an underground solar system that is totally isolated from Earth. We have examined the horrifying, unrecognized records of scored titanium and impossible sonar encounters, which is the most unsettling part. Now, though, when we emerge from the hadal zone and leave that crushing blackness behind, it is critical to put this disturbing enigma in context. We must address the central mystery that specialists can't sleep over. In light of these terrible occurrences and the utter lack of response from the scientific community, what is the absolute reality? To start, let's set the record straight and dispel some of the most fantastical misconceptions that people have about the ocean depths. Neither a black hole nor a magical doorway exists in the depths of the ocean. A gravitational anomaly in the Puerto Rican Trench has been the subject of internet conspiracy theories, suggesting it may be a portal to a parallel universe. No, That is not real. While the anomaly is undeniably real, it does not indicate the presence of an active portal or any other such significant event. An enormous, extremely thick region of the Earth's crust with a stronger gravitational attraction than its surrounding region is what we mean when we talk about this. The assertions that a supernatural force is dragging down submarines are also much overblown. Although the ocean's pressure and currents are enormous, they are controlled by well-established physical rules. There is no magic to the terror. Physics is a dreadful thing. Nonetheless, the immensity of the unknown is where reality rests. Keep in mind that our exploration of the ocean floor has only covered a small fraction, less than 5%. The unexplained 3-foot-wide marks in the sediment, the rhythmic metallic scraping, the abrupt enormous temperature surges, and the abnormalities we discussed are not evidence of fiction. They show that there is a hidden aspect of nature that mainstream science is ignoring since it doesn't fit into its models. Let's examine the Scored Hall incident more closely. This proves it all. The patterns show something else happened here than what conventional science is trying to tell us: a collision with rocks or debris. An enormously muscular and physically robust creature, dwarfed by snailfish or squid, is probably responsible for the deep grooves discovered on the submersibles. It gives the impression of a massive predator or scavenger that lives in such a high-pressure setting by relying on its brute strength. The existence of such massive creatures is now being seriously considered by experts who had previously dismissed the idea. In order to survive the depths, certain animals have developed biological armor that resembles titanium. Later on, you'll hear mechanical noises. In all likelihood, these are the most disturbing details. Repeated high-energy geological occurrences are strongly suggested by these rhythmic noises. The pattern is just too regular to be caused by a crustal fault or a huge underwater landslip. This has been interpreted in different ways by different theorists. Some think it could be an indication of geological instability, which could cause a huge earthquake. Others think it could be something biological, like a large creature speaking to itself in the dark. Also, why has there been no response? For what reason aren't governments sounding the alarm? Instead of a vast conspiracy, the scientists are simply calculating the risks and staying silent. Disclosing data points that contradict biological and physical constraints without a consistent justification would cast doubt on decades of established oceanography. Just picture it. They're admitting there's something they can't quite place down there. Anxieties would ensue. The lack of communication is an effort to covertly collect additional data in the hopes of quietly solving the ultimate enigma of the deep sea before admitting their basic models are flawed. Consequently, the 11,034-meter depth is a story about a partially completed map. Those horrific occurrences documented there are only the beginning of what might be a whole new planet. Here we are witnessing an unseen ultra-high biosphere that is regulated by enormous and unpredictable geological forces and fueled by internal geothermal energy. It is a place where life exists on an unprecedented scale. What do you think is hiding at the bottom of Earth's ocean? A new form of life? An ancient remnant of evolution? Or something else? Something the world isn't ready for? Comment below your theory. Hit like if this blew your mind. Subscribe for more investigations beyond science and sound, where the deepest truths aren't found in books, but in pressure, silence, and darkness.